While recovering from a miscarriage, my sister-in-law announced her pregnancy at dinner and said, "At least I know how to keep a baby." My husband looked away. I walked out mid-meal, but not before leaving something on the table that would haunt them, because I'll start by saying this. I didn't want kids for a long time. Not because I didn't love the idea of being a mother, but because I was scared. Scared I'd fail. Scared I'd lose myself. Scared the timing wouldn't be right. But when Mark and I finally decided we were ready, I let myself hope for the first time in years. I let myself imagine a little girl with his eyes or a boy with my laugh. That's where all of this started, hope. The first time I miscarried, it was early. 6 weeks. People call it a chemical pregnancy, like that makes it easier. Like it never really counted. But it counted to me. I saw 2 pink lines. I started picking out names. Then I started bleeding. We grieved quietly. Mark said all the right things. "It wasn't your fault. We'll try again. Next time will be different." I wanted to believe him. The second time, we got to hear the heartbeat. I had a little bump. I bought a stupid little pair of socks at Target and hid them in a drawer. We made it to the second trimester before I woke up one morning and knew something was wrong. Just a feeling. A deep, sinking fear. I was right. They couldn't find the heartbeat in my checkup. I remember the tech's face. How she went quiet and left to get the doctor. Mark held my hand. I didn't cry at first. I went completely numb. Like my body shut down to protect me from what it already knew. That was 3 months ago. I was still bleeding emotionally when Tracy invited us to Sunday dinner. Tracy is my husband's younger sister. We've never been close. She's loud, always needs to be the center of attention. She competes in ways that don't even make sense. Better house, better car, better hair, better Instagram. But I never thought she'd go this far. We arrived at their house in Tacoma around 5 p.m. It was the usual setup: grilled chicken, wine glasses, her fake laughter echoing through the hall as she hugged everyone too tightly. She was wearing a fitted dress. Belly just barely there. I noticed, but I didn't say anything. Didn't even look too long. I had this gut feeling, like something bad was about to happen. About 20 minutes into dinner, right after the salad plates were cleared, Tracy stood up and clinked her glass with a spoon. "I have something to share," she said, smiling like she just won the lottery. "Daniel and I are expecting." Gasps. Cheers. Her mom started crying. Her dad looked proud. Mark gave a tight smile. I said, "Congratulations." My voice didn't shake. I'd practiced it in the mirror more times than I care to admit. Because I knew she would do this. Not because she was pregnant. Because she would make it a performance. But then she looked at me, locked eyes, and smiled wider. "At least I know how to keep a baby." It was like the room tilted, like the air got sucked out. The clinking stopped. Someone dropped a fork. Maybe her mom. I don't remember. I looked at Mark. He didn't look up, just stared down at his plate, like he was hoping if he kept quiet it would all pass. That silence broke something in me. I stood up, slowly. Walked over to the kitchen counter where I'd left my bag. I pulled out a white envelope. Inside were the ultrasound prints from both pregnancies. I don't know why I brought them. I think part of me always knew this family would never see me as whole unless I proved I'd lost something real. I walked back and dropped the envelope on the table, right in front of Tracy's plate. "You want to talk about babies?" I said. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "Here. Meet mine." No one said a word. I turned and walked out, got in the car, and drove home in silence. Mark didn't come after me. That night, I slept in the guest room. And the next morning, everything started to unravel. I didn't hear from Mark the next morning. I thought maybe he needed time to process what happened. Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe, stupidly, I hoped he was defending me. He came home around 11 a.m., didn't knock. Just walked in like nothing had changed. Set his keys on the counter. Opened the fridge. I stood in the kitchen doorway and waited for him to say something. Anything. But all he said was, "That was dramatic." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "She was out of line." Just that. I asked him, "Did you know she was going to say that?" He didn't answer right away. Just took a sip of his coffee and finally said, "She didn't mean it like that." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It came out bitter and sharp. She looked me in the eye when she said it. Mark shrugged. "She's pregnant. People say dumb stuff. Just let it go." That was the first time I realized how deep this went, how alone I really was. Later that week, his mother called. Not to check on me, not to ask how I was feeling. She asked if I'd apologize to Tracy. "You ruined a special night for her," she said, her voice tight. "I ruined it?" I asked. She mocked my miscarriages. There was a pause. Then, "She didn't mean it like that. She's just excited. Emotional. You can understand that, right?" I hung up. The next few weeks were quiet. Mark slept on the couch half the time. The other half, he stayed late at work. We barely spoke. When we did, it was surface stuff: bills, groceries, schedules. Nothing real. Nothing honest. Then one morning, I opened his laptop. I wasn't snooping. I swear. He'd left it open on the kitchen table. I was looking for a recipe we'd saved months ago. But what I found instead was a folder. Labeled, "Baby Stuff, Tracy." I clicked. Inside were photos. Dozens. From her first ultrasound. From the doctor's office. From a gender reveal she hadn't even posted online yet. All sent by Mark. The timestamps showed he had them before dinner that night. He had known for weeks. She'd kept him updated. She'd sent him every picture. Like he was the one carrying that baby. My stomach dropped. I scrolled through messages. They weren't flirty. Nothing sexual. But they were too close. Too personal. "She's moving today. You would have loved seeing her wiggle. Thanks for being there for me. You get me more than anyone." They weren't just siblings. Not anymore. Not in any way that made sense. I asked him that night. Straight up. "Are you having an emotional affair with your sister-in-law?" He didn't deny it. "She's the only one who's been kind to me through all this," he said. That's when I knew. Tracy's comment at dinner wasn't a jab. It wasn't a mistake. It was a knife she handed me with a smile. And Mark stood there and watched. I moved out the next day. Just for a few weeks, I told myself. I stayed with my cousin in Shoreline. But I didn't just sit there and cry. I started planning. Because grief buried me once. But this time I was going to use it to dig up the truth. At first, I thought I'd just expose them. Make everyone see what they really were. But as I sat in my cousin's spare bedroom staring at Tracy's smug face on social media, posing in maternity photos, tagging Mark in her captions, I realized something else. She wanted me to see it. And she wanted everyone else to think Mark was more involved than he should be. But she wasn't just trying to hurt me. She was using him. I remembered something Mark's mom once said at a family party years ago. Tracy always wanted what her brother had, even when she was a little girl. Back then, it sounded innocent. Now, it felt sinister. While I was still recovering, still bleeding and blaming myself for our loss, Tracy had been sending Mark messages about baby names, birth plans, and heartbeats. She'd even invited him to the gender reveal without me. And he went. I found that out 2 weeks later. A coworker of his, someone I barely knew but who followed Tracy on Instagram, sent me a message. "Hey, weird question, weren't you supposed to be out of town that weekend? Just saw this." It was a photo. Tracy in a pink dress. Daniel holding a smoke popper. Mark standing right behind them, off to the side, but clear as day. Smiling. I wasn't just excluded. I was replaced. That's when I hired a lawyer. I needed to know my options. We weren't divorced yet. Our finances were still tied. And there was more. I'd helped Mark get a loan to open his auto detailing shop. My name was still on the paperwork. I had co-signed everything when his credit wasn't good enough. Turns out Tracy and Daniel had invested in the shop recently too. Quietly. Just a bridge loan, the lawyer said. Short-term, high interest, and sketchy as hell. I started digging deeper. I pulled financial statements. I checked our joint account logs. Mark had been paying Tracy back. Quiet transfers, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. And then I saw one labeled nursery supplies. My heart stopped. He used our money, my money, to buy things for her baby. I sent screenshots to the lawyer. I wanted to freeze accounts, protect my assets. I wasn't just leaving him. I was going to make sure he couldn't take a damn thing from me when I did. But that wasn't all. One night, while I was still at my cousin's, I got a call from Daniel, Tracy's husband. He sounded drunk. His voice was low, like he was afraid someone might hear. "I know what they're doing," he said. "I just don't know how far it went." I didn't say a word. Just let him talk. "She keeps talking about how this baby's going to change everything. How she's going to finally have a family that understands her. She doesn't mean me, does she?" He was crying by the end of the call. I hung up and stared at the wall. There was a time when I would have felt sorry for him. But not anymore. They thought they were clever. That they could play house with each other while we stood on the sidelines. They were wrong. The trap was already set. I just had to wait for the right moment to spring it. I stayed quiet for another 3 weeks. No messages to Mark. No legal threats yet. Just quiet. But I was watching everything. Tracy kept posting updates like her life was perfect. Weekly bump photos. Nursery paint colors. A baby name reveal that included a monogram, MHD. The middle initials were Mark's. Daniel's name was nowhere in it. I screenshot everything. Mark texted once. Just once. "Hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you want to talk." I didn't reply, but I saved it. Because silence is stronger than anger when you're about to detonate someone's world. Meanwhile, my lawyer pulled a loan agreements tied to Mark's shop. She found proof that Tracy's name had been added to the LLC paperwork as a silent partner. That gave her legal interest in the business, even though I had backed it first, with my name, my credit, and my savings. And yet, she wasn't investing with Daniel. She was doing it with my husband. I met with Daniel in person. We sat in his truck, parked at the marina, no one else around. He looked hollowed out, like a man who hadn't slept in days. "She's got Mark on a leash," he said. "Thinks she's smarter than both of us." I showed him everything. The financials, the texts, the business filings, the baby name post. His hands were shaking when he finished reading. "She told me this baby was mine," he said. We sat in silence for a long time. Then he handed me something, an audio recording on his phone. From one of their fights. Tracy's voice was low and smug. "He gives me what you never could. He shows up. He cares. When this baby's born, it's not going to matter who's on the birth certificate. It's going to be obvious." She didn't say Mark's name, but she didn't have to. That was all I needed. I handed the recording to my lawyer. We had everything now. Financial betrayal, emotional infidelity, and possible paternity questions that could rip through both families. But I wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet. Because Tracy's baby shower was coming up. The invites went out. Custom, embossed, floral print. One ended up in my cousin's mailbox, probably sent by accident. But fate has a way of handing you exactly what you need. It was being held at the community center 2 blocks from where Mark and I got married. All her friends. Her parents. Daniel. Mark. One room. One perfect audience. And I had the power to ruin them both in one unforgettable moment. The only question now was how far I was willing to go. The day of Tracy's baby shower was unusually sunny for early March in Tacoma. I wore black. Not out of mourning, but because I wanted them to remember how it felt to see me walk into that room. Like a funeral was coming, and it was. I waited until the games were over. Until the cake had been cut. Until Tracy was sitting in the center of the room, opening gift after gift with that fake smile stretched across her face, like she was already some glowing, perfect mother. Mark stood off to the side, trying not to be noticed. Daniel sat in the back, arms crossed, looking like he was waiting for something bad to happen. He was. I walked in quietly. Some heads turned. Whispers started right away. Tracy froze when she saw me. Then she smirked. "I thought you weren't coming," she said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. I walked up to her, handed her a small white box, and said, "Open it." She looked confused but curious. She liked attention too much to resist. She opened the lid. Inside were 2 USB drives, labeled in sharp black ink. One said, Finances. The other, Voices. She blinked. What is this? That one has copies of every bank transfer you and Mark made using my money, I said. The other is a recording of you admitting this baby might not be Daniel's. The room went dead quiet. Her mother gasped. Her father stood up. Mark looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. Daniel stood slowly, walked to the center of the room, and said, Play it. Tracy stuttered. Wait, no. But Daniel had already plugged the USB into the Bluetooth speaker behind her. Her voice filled the room. He gives me what you never could. When this baby's born, it's not going to matter who's on the birth certificate, someone gasped. Someone else whispered, Oh my God. Tracy tried to grab the speaker, but I stepped between them. I'm pressing charges, I said. For fraud. You used my name, my credit, my money. And Mark helped you. Mark looked at me, his face pale. Please, let's talk about this. I turned to him. Talk. You left me bleeding alone in our bed while you played daddy to her baby. Then I pulled out the final envelope. This one was from my lawyer. This is a cease and desist. You're being removed from the business. I've already dissolved the LLC and frozen the accounts. You'll get nothing. Mark looked stunned. And the house, I said. Already sold. I took my name off the deed 3 weeks ago and sold it to a private buyer. You're getting served with eviction paperwork tomorrow. Tracy stood there shaking. Then I looked at her and smiled, not kind, not forgiving, cold. And when that baby gets here and the timeline doesn't add up, don't worry, someone will make sure a paternity test does. I walked out to silence. No one followed me. No one called. 3 weeks later, Mark was crashing on a friend's couch. Tracy moved back in with her parents. Daniel filed for divorce and requested a court-ordered DNA test. It came back negative. Mark wasn't the father either. She'd ruined 4 lives chasing something she never even had. I rebuilt slowly. Moved back into my own place. Cut ties with his family completely. Got my money back. Got my power back. Grief didn't kill me. But it did change me. They thought I'd stay broken. But I didn't. I came back sharper. And I made sure they remembered what I looked like when I walked out, black dress, head high, and finally free.